I do agree with Paquito. I think the fundamental reason why the partnership with Lebrón hasn't worked is because their game styles are completely different. And this probably, a lot of people will say, why wasn't this the case back in 2019 when they teamed up and they reached the number one spot?
As you mentioned, Lebrón is probably used to the fact that game style with Galan, and that got him to the number one spot, and he's kind of in like his prime in terms of like physical state and age. So it's kind of like, why would he go back to or like try to change his game style? Every time we talked about Paquito and Lebrón, we always said that it just didn't seem like they were playing kind of at the same style, but they just seemed completely on different wavelengths.
So I think Paquito throughout the years has actually become far more tame, both on the court and off the court. And I think in his partnership with Lebrón this time round, we've seen him be far more calm.
And he's also a player that's more known for his offensive side than his defensive side. So I'm not sure how comfortable Cardona is going to be at the back of the court and also playing that slow rhythm. So I just thought that was interesting that he mentioned kind of this is why I think my partnership with Lebrón failed. But now you're pairing up with Cardona. What do you... Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 61, and as always, joined by my co-host here today, Hugo. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. Actually enjoying a bit of holidays now. So I'm down in the south of Spain, in Granada. You've obviously been to my house, well, my parents' house. Not a bad spot, and I'm already missing playing paddle because obviously it's not as easily accessible as it is in Madrid, where we're both based. And obviously I'm missing my partner on the court as well because you're not around. So yeah, it's going to be a long few weeks until the much expected and much awaited return.
Yeah, I mean, I can say the same, Hugo. It's I'm definitely missing it because there is obviously availability here in Madrid. I can go and play, but I'm not going to lie. I kind of fear going and playing in a random Playtomic match without you, just because of, different levels and stuff like that. I don't know if it's like worth it or I'll enjoy it. So for the time being, I'm kind of restraining myself from playing. And I guess I am taking some kind of time off, which sometimes it is nice, but kind of already feels like I haven't played in ages. So before I go on my own holidays to Italy next week, I'm very tempted. I'll probably will end up playing, but yeah, probably won't enjoy it as much as I normally do when I play alongside you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I told you what I ended up doing when I moved over to Madrid a year and a bit ago. I started playing with randoms, total randoms for every single match because I didn't really have a network of paddle players that I knew. And that's actually something that Playtomic does really well. I mean, it's amazing how easily accessible it is to join a match with 3 random people and enjoy it. Obviously, a lot of the times you don't enjoy it, or there's elements of the match that you don't enjoy, whether it's your partner, whether it's the other pair trying to win and therefore playing more balls to your partner because you're actually a better player than your partner. So there's a lot of different elements in it. But I do think that you learn a lot because you have to adapt to playing with different players. You end up having to play on both sides of the court, even though everyone wants to play on the backhand. And well, as you know, that's why I ended up being a kind of a specialized forehand player. So yeah, all I'd say is I totally agree. And playing with randoms is something that I don't really fancy doing right now, given that we've kind of reached a level where it's important to play with a partner and someone you know, because most people play with partners. But every now and then it could potentially do no harm. I guess we'll see when you play a random match next week.
Yeah, exactly. I'll make sure to let you know. But it's interesting, maybe just quickly, because the dynamics, I guess, in Spain versus other countries are, I think, very different. As you kind of alluded to, in Spain, it's very easy to, like, most people at a high level, you normally play with a partner, but you play against like completely random people. Whereas at least when I was in the UK, you just very much stick to your network of players because, you kind of know each other, you like playing with each other, levels similar, and you just have a good time. Whereas, yeah, here in Spain with Playtomic and the amount of players that there are, like, it's very likely that you just go and play random matches with random people, which can kind of, like you mentioned, it can be good in the sense that you kind of playing different players, so you see different game styles and stuff. But at the same time, it can be really frustrating because you don't really know. I mean, Playtomic has a kind of indicative level, but you don't really know if that player is that level or not, and you can get surprises, either good or bad, I guess.
Yeah, no, totally agree, and it is interesting to see how it works for different countries. So it'd be great to hear about our fans. Maybe they could drop it in their comment in the comments of this video. Maybe their thoughts on what happens in their respective countries. Do they normally stick to their network when they try and find or play matches? Are they very keen to play with randoms? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't like doing that, and I do understand them, at least in a way. So yeah, please let us know your thoughts, guys.
Yeah, exactly. It will be very interesting to see how it is in other countries. But maybe now moving on to sort of the main episode and what we really wanted to discuss today. I think firstly we wanted to kick off with a player interview. So recently, Paquito Navarro had quite an extensive interview with Manu Martin, and there were very interesting things he said. They talked a lot about not just kind of like his current situation and his partnership with Lebrón and, you know, his future with Cardona, but also just in general about paddle and the how the market is growing and how much like players are making and all of that, which I think is also quite interesting, and it's nice to hear this. So yeah, maybe we can start off kind of discussing a bit about, I guess, why he thought that Lebrón and kind of him didn't really work out. And I don't know what you think, Hugo. He was kind of alluded to the difference in game styles, which I think is something that we all kind of noticed and we all mentioned. But yeah, I guess it was kind of nice in a way to hear like the actual partners of Paquito actually admitting that kind of that's why he felt was really what was missing from them, and kind of like they couldn't really adjust to each other. I don't know, how did you feel about like his comments and what he said about his partnership with Lebrón?
Yeah, I really enjoy listening to Paquito because I think he's really open and he's really honest about how he feels, and he's that way on the court, he's that way off the court, and I think we both agree that Paquito throughout the years has actually become far more tamed, both on the court and off the court. And I think in his partnership with Lebrón this time round, we've seen him be far more calm, and he was trying to kind of support Lebrón and be the kind of the leader in an emotional sense, in terms of trying to keep them both in their cages, because they're both obviously very emotional, very kind of heated players. And I do agree with Paquito. I think the fundamental reason why the partnership with Lebrón hasn't worked is because their game styles are completely different. And this probably, a lot of people will say, why wasn't this the case back in 2019 when they teamed up and they reached the number one spot? And I think it's down to two reasons. I think paddle today is far more competitive. I think the pairs are better, and Paquito and Lebrón have faced two of the best pairs in the last, probably two of the best pairs in the last 10 years when you look at both Goyan Tapia and Chingalan. So I think the level has raised significantly, and also the level of other pairs, because at the end of the day, the investment that's been going into the paddle world during the last, 5-6 years has grown exponentially. And compared to when they were the number one seeded pair in the world, the landscape's changed completely, and players are just, the average player is much better, and the professional player, the average player within that professional kind of landscape, is far better as well. So I think that's a key reason. But also just Lebrón obviously reached the number one spot with Galan playing a very aggressive form of paddle, which is similar to what Goyan Tapia are doing today, where they just try and win the net as soon as possible. They like kind of going and having kind of net battles where it's all about reflexes and trying to produce quick volleys and hit volleys to your opponent's body, etc. And that's not something that Paquito's used to, and that's not something that he's ever played. Like, that's not a game style that he's ever wanted to kind of focus on and be a game style that has really suited his abilities. Because even though he's probably one of the most talented players on tour, his physical condition is not Lebron's and it's not Galan's. He's probably a step down, at least in terms of how much he believes in his physical condition and how much he can basically push forward and keep doing that up and down throughout the matches. So I think I do agree with Paquito. That's one of the main reasons. I think there's a whole side of the pressure that they faced as a pair because they were previously the number one seeded pair. Also, Lebron not being at his level, at his best level, and I think mentally suffering a little bit right now since his split with Galan. But I agree. I think those. I mean, I definitely agree with Paquito's analysis.
Yeah, I mean, the game has certainly changed. Now it's a much faster paddle. As you mentioned, Lebron is probably used to the fact that that game style with Galan, and that got him to the number one spot. And he's kind of in like his prime in terms of like physical state and age. So it's kind of like, why would he go back to or like try to change his game style? You know, if it has like, if essentially what got him to the number one so many years and made him like one of the most dominant players we'd ever seen, that aggressive style essentially. So, and on the flip side, you've obviously got Paquito, who couldn't probably get to Lebron's kind of game style, really, like at least not in the long run. I don't really see Paquito ever being that. It's certainly at this age, right? If we're talking about Paquito, you know, back in the day, or maybe when he was, if he would have been like 27, 28, could he have done it? Probably. But now at his age, like I just don't see him being able to sustain that in the long run for them to be able to compete against Koyan Tapia or Chingo Tangalan. So it kind of makes a lot of sense to me what he said. And this is kind of, I think, what we were talking about every time we talked about Paquito and Lebron. We always said that it just didn't seem like they were playing kind of at the same style, but they just seemed completely on different wavelengths from like a paddle perspective, and very correctly so. I also agree with you that there's a whole kind of mental side of it, which we know both players can be sometimes a bit emotional, and there wasn't really that like proper stable leader as we've seen in other pairs, like for example Galan or even Chingoto sometimes can be quite like cold, or like Nenno in Los Super Pibes, or for example Tapia and Cuellar. I think both of them as well can be that sort of more stable, I guess, partner and kind of lead the partnership in that sense. So I think those are the main two reasons why it didn't work out. Now it's quite interesting because I don't know what you think about this, Hugo, but he kind of said all of this, but now he's pairing up with Pablo Cardona, who I'd also argue is a very offensive player. He's also a lefty. So how is Paquito going to adjust to that? And he's also a player that's more known for his offensive side than his defensive side. So I'm not sure how comfortable Cardona is going to be at the back of the court and also playing that slow rhythm. So I just thought that was interesting that he mentioned kind of, this is why I think my partnership with Lebron failed. But now you're pairing up with Cardona. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And just actually going back very quickly to the point on Paquito is not really able to play at Lebron's pace. I think it's also down to Paquito doesn't think that that's what's going to bring him the most success, just because it doesn't bring out his best attributes. I think, for example, his lob is one of the best lobs on tour. And obviously, if you keep just rushing to the net, you're not taking advantage of being at the back of the court. Also, his use of the back glass and side glass is, again, one of the best on tour. So he's very comfortable just sitting and defending at the back of the court and producing lobs and slowly kind of pushing the opponent to the back of the court. And that's when he takes the stance to push forward. And also, I don't think his reflexes and his reactions of the net are at the level of players like Galan, Lebron, but even Chingoto, even Tapia. That's just not what he's been used to, not his strength. And I think that's why it's not just that he can't play at Lebron's pace. It's just that he doesn't feel comfortable and he doesn't think that that's what's going to bring the most out of him as a player. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I'm very surprised. I mean, we obviously talked about the fact that Cardona is a very young player, quite an erratic player still, even though we've seen him reach very high highs in terms of his level of play. We've also seen him kind of disappear within matches and have a few stinkers, as per se, which is totally normal for someone of his age. But I think from a paddle perspective, in terms of his style of play, it's quite similar to Lebron's. He's going to try and win the net as soon as possible and finish the point as soon as possible, because Cardona has a very powerful volley, a very powerful smash, etc. And he's not that comfortable at the back of the court. So it's almost like you've changed pairs, you've changed partner, but the game style that your partner is suited to is practically identical to what Lebron wanted to play, like the style of paddle he wanted to play. So I don't know whether Paquito just thinks I'm going to be able to change Cardona and have him play the way I want to play because I'm a legend of the game and Cardona is just open to learning from me. I think that's probably a side of why he thinks the partnership could work. And maybe also the fact that, as we've previously mentioned a lot of times, Lebron not being in the best position from a mental standpoint has really hurted Paquito and Lebron as a pair. Cardona right now is in a really good moment in his career, probably at the peak of his game so far. So maybe even if every now and then the partnership isn't working on court, they can work things through and find solutions, where it seemed like Lebron wasn't really that open to that. He didn't have the patience for it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think Cardona is definitely heading into the partnership with an element of I'm the one that kind of needs to adapt here. And I think he'll be very humble about it. I'm sure that probably Lebron was more thinking like I'm the leader. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, he's been better than Paquito and he's won more than Paquito in the last year. So he was probably thinking more like Paquito should kind of try to adapt to me and kind of the play should evolve around me. Whereas I think Cardona, due to his age, probably the respect that he has for Paquito, the fact that, I mean, I still think that Paquito is definitely a better player right now than Cardona is. So I'm sure that Cardona is going to go into the partnership like, eager to learn and eager to adapt. I'm not sure if he can adapt to that game style, just because like he's so like his best weapons are clearly like his smash and his volleys. So if you kind of like take that away from him, I just don't know if the player that will essentially remain is enough like to really challenge at the top. I do think that they can have like those kind of runs in tournaments and stuff where they can like cause big upsets. But I think in those tournaments where they like outperform, let's say, what people expect, I think it'll be largely due to the fact that Cardona is like on fire, and I don't know, his like smashing game is absolutely insane, because we've seen him some games where he literally just wins it with his smash. So we'll see how he adjusts to that. Now, something that I thought as well was quite interesting in the interview, talking about his partnership with Cardona, was he kind of mentioned like what he expects, or like kind of the goals of the partnership. And I don't know, I found it quite surprising, because he said that basically like if he gets to quarterfinals, it's like really, really good. If he kind of makes semifinals, it's like, oh wow, like yeah, I mean, this was great, we kind of outperformed. And if he's like, oh, and in the chance that we make a final, then it's like unbelievable. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was kind of I think he was like lowballing. Like I kind of felt a bit of a lack of ambition, I'm not gonna lie, especially because, to be honest, like this season Cardona has made 3 quarterfinals already, and he's made 1 semifinal. Now, the semifinal was at the Bordeaux P2, where, let's say, the top 4 pairs weren't there. But if you remember that, he was also playing with Bergamini on the left. So it was basically him like carrying the pair to the semifinals. And he's already made 3 quarterfinals, and he's been paired up with Javi Ruiz. So now you're going with Paquito, who is like exponentially better, I would say, than Javi Ruiz. I don't know. It kind of like it just felt a bit of a lack of ambition. Like I'd say that they can definitely make quarterfinals, And I mean, semifinals is definitely that they at that point they would have to knock off like kind of like a big pair. But I think like quarterfinals should be like kind of, you know, the expectation for them. I'm not gonna lie. And semifinals would be like, yeah, great tournament. You make the semifinals. I mean, final would be absolutely insane. But I don't know, it seemed like Paquito was like, oh, if we make quarterfinals, that's already like really, really good. I don't know. What do you think about that, Hugo?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was really surprised by that comment because he did kind of make it sound like making the quarterfinals is what they would deem as a success as a
Right.
tournament.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't agree. A success is when you outdo your expectations, at least in my eyes. So I think a success for them as a pair would be making the semifinals because they would beat one of the top four pairs. And even though we both agree that Nenno Lebrón and Stupa and Yanguas on paper are better pairs because individually they're better players than Paquito and Cardona, because I think Cardona is the worst player out of the six players that we mentioned by a significant amount still right now at this moment in their careers. I still think that they should feel like they can beat Yanguas and Estupa and Lebron and Nenno. Not easily, but every other tournament or one in every three tournaments at the very least. Because if that's not their objective, then I'm very surprised, to be honest. I mean, Paquito's level this season has been very, very high, higher than Lebron's, and in some cases and in some tournaments, he's carried that partnership. And we've seen Paquito battle it out against Tapia and on the cross court, against Galan, against Estupa. I'd almost argue that Paquito's season has been better than Stupa's, for example. I'd almost put him in that third spot in terms of the third best backhand on tour. So I definitely think they can challenge the Nenno and Lebron, having Lebron on the backhand of the court and, well, having played on the forehand for a number of years, as we've discussed extensively. So I think that pair can, if Paquito and Cardona are playing well, they can definitely feel like they can challenge that pair. And also, Yanguas and Stupa, yes, on paper they're a little bit better, but hey, I mean, if Paquito wins that cross court battle against Stupa, which I definitely think that he has the capacity to do, why can't they beat them every other week? So, yeah, I think as a pair, Cardona and Paquito should be making the quarterfinals in every single tournament. Otherwise, it would be a failure for me because they are the fifth seeded pair. So they're literally one step away from the top four pairs, which would be an expectation of making the semi-finals in pretty much every tournament. So yeah, I was definitely surprised about his low balling. I think there's probably an angle, and I was thinking it through, and I think it's probably to reduce the pressure on the pair and reduce the pressure on Cardona specifically because he's very young. He obviously has a lot of talent, but Paquito knows that he's still not as consistent as some of the other top players that are above them in the ranks or even in and around them. So yeah, I think that's probably why he's saying it. I think he probably thinks that if they face Garrido Alex Ruiz in a match, then they have more experience, for example, even though on paper they might not have as much ability as Cardona and Paquito, they do have more experience. And I've just taken Garrido Ruiz as a random example, but I think that's probably what Paquito is thinking in his head. It's just that I personally don't agree.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, if he is doing it, because I'm sure Cardona is going to see the interview, and everyone in the panel will probably would have heard it and seen it. So I think that's fair. I mean, it does make sense that he would kind of try to lower the expectations to take the pressure off Cardona, who's probably already feeling quite a bit pressurized, right? You're going to play with a legend of the game, so he's kind of probably feeling like, you know, this is kind of my real first shot at being with someone where I could potentially even kind of win a title or kind of be up there competing with the best, like week in, week out. So there's already enough pressure as it is. Probably doesn't want to add more pressure to it. But yeah, I mean, I think for us like fans, we're kind of expecting them to make quarterfinals, I'd say every tournament. And as you said, if they make a semi-final here and there, then it's like, you know what, that's been a successful tournament. But
I guess there, just to jump in very quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just double thinking about this subject. And when you think about the other pairs that they'll have to face to be in the quarterfinals, it could be Coqui and John, it could be Garrido and Ruiz, it could be Bela and Tello. I think there's one other major one. Well, Momo and Edu Alonso as well.
Lucho, maybe Maxi.
Lucho and Maxi. Where would you put Paquito and Cardona amongst those pairs? Because I was just thinking about it, and it's not that easy, is it? It's quite tight.
Yeah. I mean, I think if not on par, maybe below Garrido and Ruiz, but I think like up there. I think, to be honest, they should be. I mean, Paquito, I think, is the best player, definitely, out of all the players that you mentioned, and I think by a reasonable margin as well. And yeah, I don't know if I like trust enough the other, like, not sure if I trust Alex Ruiz enough. Let's say against Cardona, I think that's kind of like quite a similar, like, I guess, battle. And I probably think Cardona is better offensively. Against Lucho Capra, I definitely think Cardona is playing much better than Lucho Capra right now. I mean, Coqui and John, maybe they're the ones probably, I'd say.
Yeah, that's my major doubt as well.
Yeah, I'd probably put like Coqui and John first, then Paquito, Cardona, and then Garrido, Alex Ruiz, something like that, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. That was just a quick analysis that I was doing in my head, and I thought it was quite interesting. And maybe helps Paquito a little bit in his opinion, because it is true that if in the quarterfinals they face Coqui and John, right now, could Coqui and John be favourites given the experience that they have playing together, etc.?
I think they could. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, so maybe that's an angle that maybe we should take into consideration. But looking at the other pairs that we mentioned, and also Sanyo and Alex Arroyo, who we actually didn't mention, I still think that Paquito and Cardona are above all the others, at least on paper for now.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that as well. But maybe moving on, given that we've kind of talked about a bit about the tournaments, we do want to quickly discuss the upcoming Finland P2. Very exciting, because we're going to see a lot of new pairs. I've actually got the list right in front of me. So we've obviously got, and starting at number 1 seed, Juán Lebrón, starting at number 2 seed, Yanguas Stupa. And then we've also got number 3 seed, who we just talked about, Cardona and Paquito. Number 5th seed, Garrido and Alex Ruiz. And then we've also got Momo and Edu Alonso below that. And I think that's, at least out of the main ones, I think that's basically it. So, nice. So yeah, Hugo, maybe just to hand it over to you. What are your thoughts? What are your predictions? I'll let you go with the flow. Which pair you want to discuss, or whatever prediction you want to make, go for it.
I'm actually so excited for Finland, mainly because we've obviously haven't had any major Premier Padel tournaments for 2 weeks, and it'll be the last tournament for the next month or so, I believe, because I think Padel comes back in September, if I'm not mistaken, with the Madrid P1. Yeah, so the players are going to have a long break. And to be honest, it's a bit weird how the calendar's set up, because players have now had basically a 2-week break. It is true that some of them have played in the European Championships. Some others have played in the FIP Platinum in Sardinia. So I understand it, but there haven't been any Premier Padel tournaments for 2 weeks. Then there's a P2 in Finland, and then there's like a 3-week break. It's a bit weird, but very excited for this tournament. And I'm quite surprised about how excited I am, given that the top 2 pairs, Chingalan and Goyan Tabia, aren't playing. Normally, that's kind of, it reduces the attractiveness of the tournament. But I think it's key that it's just the top 2 pairs rather than the top 4, which was the case with the Bordeaux P2, if I'm not mistaken. I think that changes it a lot. And also the fact that there's so many new pairs, because as you just mentioned, we've got Nenno and Lebrón kicking it off. We've got Stupa and Yanguas. We've got Paquito and Cardona. We've got Edu Alonso and Momo, who've actually recently won their first tournament together, the FIP Platinum in Sardinia, if I'm not mistaken. And they looked really good. And also Garrido and Ruiz, who, weird, they still haven't been announced as a pair. online, which I'm kind of quite surprised about. But anyway, I guess they'll announce it imminently. Yeah, I mean, maybe the format we could do is who do you think's gonna win the tournament, and who do you think's gonna be the major upset? Now, I know this is gonna depend a lot on the draws, which we've just discussed before joining this. Well, before recording the episode, I don't think the draws are out yet, at least not the main draws. So it's quite hard. But maybe, yeah, just a bit of a kind of random shot in the air. Maybe or you could give the two pairs that you think could win it or will win it. You can have two shouts, and maybe the major upset.
Oh, that's interesting. By major upset, can I just clarify? You mean like
Based on your expectations,
but as in like most disappointing?
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, okay.
Tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, interesting one. I mean, I think I like to win. I mean, I think the top two seeded pairs. So Nenno and Lebrón and Yanguas and Stupa. And then I'm also going to put in there Koki and John, I think, as well. I think that I quite like them as well out of all the other pairs. I mean, we literally just mentioned we probably put them ahead of all the other ones. And I think just that element of having been together when everyone else is completely new will probably help them quite a bit. Now, in terms of like Lebrón and Nenno, I just think like, I mean, ultimately, I know we do talk a lot, or or at least I have like mentioned how I think like Lebrón and Nenno, I don't have huge expectations for them, or let's say, or it's like super risky. But I think like context is very important. And now we, or at least I talk about that in the context of there's Cuello Tapia, there's Galan and Chingoto. In this tournament, there's no Cuello Tapia and there's no Galan and Chingoto. So I do think that makes it a lot easier for them to win. Now, as players individually as well, they're like some of like, top 4, top 5 players in the world. So, and they've shown that they do make like semifinals pretty much consistently. So I think that, I mean, when I look at all the players that are in this tournament, and then I look at Nenno and Lebrón individually, for me, they're clearly like the best players there in terms of just like individually. And we'll see how Lebrón is on the left, because that could potentially be a kind of surprise factor for most players, like who haven't actually faced Lebrón on the left. So sometimes we've seen how when new pairs are formed, because they're new, players haven't had the time to adjust to playing against them. So I think not only are they new, but you're throwing Lebrón on the left. So I think he could potentially be quite unpredictable and really hard for players to handle. So, I mean, I think they generally have like quite a good shot at winning this tournament, which would be quite funny given how much like, not necessarily criticize them, but I guess or at least I have doubted them, and they come here and they'll win. But I do think that they have a good shot. I mean, they are, I think for me, like clearly best players at the tournament. And then, but if let's say if I had to put my hand or my house on the line, I'd probably go with Stupa and Yanguas. They just give me a bit more sense of security, I'd say. But I will say that I actually, Stupa lately has really concerned me. Like I've been just the last couple of tournaments, I've felt like he's the one that's actually been really bad out of him and Nenno. I don't know if that's because of lack of motivation. So if you would have asked me this question like 2 weeks ago, or like, let's say prior to these last couple of tournaments, I would have said like, yeah, Yanguas, Stupa, I'm pretty certain on them. I'd definitely bet on them. But now because of Stupa, like I'm actually a bit doubting him and his current level, because I just don't really like what I've seen of him lately. So they give me more sense of security. It's just like, I guess, easier to adjust, I think, both of them than Lebrón going to the left side and having to play with Nenno. But yeah, I will say that for me, actually, out of Stupa and Yanguas, for example, the one that I'm a bit more concerned about is actually Stupa rather than Yanguas.
Now, well, no shock here, because we pretty much agree with 90% of all our analysis, apart from some major decisions, obviously, because, for example, you were never a massive backer of Paquito and Lebrón, and you proved to be 100% right. I I totally agree with the pairs you've highlighted. I think they're the big favourites because Cocky and John have already won a tournament together this season. Obviously, the Bordeaux P2, where none of the top 4 pairs were there, but they played really well. And I think they've challenged all the major pairs this season when they played against them. So I almost feel like if I had to bet my house on a pair, I would go for Cocky and John. It's just that, are they seeded 4th? I don't know how they're seeded, or maybe they're even lower down.
Yeah, 6th.
Yeah, so that means that their draw is going to be much tougher. So as a pair, if they were seeded, if all the pairs were seeded evenly, because obviously that's never going to happen, but if they were, and I had to bet my house on someone, it would be them, just because they played together for a long time, they're consistent, etc. But looking at the seeding and given how important that is, because you have fewer matches that are that hard. Obviously, the level of the matches, if you're the number 1 or number 2 seeded pair, is going to be lower than if you're the 3rd, 4th, and obviously that increase is going down. I definitely agree that Lebrón, Nenno, and Stupaczuk Yanguas are my shouts. And I mean, we've both shared our what kind of thoughts on the fact that Stupaczuk Yanguas seems to be a better pair on paper because the risk of Lebrón being back to the backhand, and he hasn't been playing that well. I have to say that I obviously told you this last night. I'm kind of getting a little bit hyped up about the Nenno-Lebrón partnership. Probably just me hoping that Lebrón gets back to his level. But it's just that I think their game styles could match. It's more a question of whether Lebrón can adapt to the backhand. But I definitely think that game styles 100% match, and personalities match a lot as well, because they're completely opposite. And I think that can really help pairs. I mean, we've seen some of the top pairs historically. The 2 players that make them up are very different. Coy and Tapia, for example, very different. Alain Lebrón, very different. Juan Martín Vela, very different. So I think that can really help the Nenno and Lebrón. It's more on Lebrón producing the goods, which it's hard to put my money on that. But yeah, if I had to pick 2 pairs, it would be the top 2 pairs. And I completely agree with you being concerned about Stupa. I mean, I think recently he's just seemed so off it. His decision making in particular is what really concerns me. He's tried to go for too many smashes at some points in matches and missed a lot of them. And then sometimes he hasn't been aggressive enough. So I am a little bit concerned, but maybe teaming up with Yanguas, who's obviously incredibly ambitious and is having the best season of his career, can really kind of catapult Stupa back to his level. But yeah, let's keep it to 2 names. I'm going to go for Cocky and John and Stupaczuk Yanguas.
Fair. I mean, I think just to your point around being hyped up about Lebrón and Nenno, I think you've been watching too many of their training Instagram videos, and all of a sudden think there. Yeah. I mean, even I get hyped about those, but then I have to like sit down, take a moment and think like, okay, this is just like your classic training video. They're making it seem like they're amazing, but then we'll see, because we did see that with Paquito and Lebrón as well. But anyway, and I guess maybe should we talk about the biggest disappointment? I think should we talk about, let's say, out of the new pairs, maybe like who do we think? I'm gonna go straight away, and I'm gonna say Garrido and Alex Ruiz. I mean, yeah, I just feel really bad for Garrido, but I just don't really kind of believe in how Alex Ruiz's level at the moment is. And I'm not sure if Alex Ruiz is also that kind of partner that brings you like confidence and like great mental stability. I feel like Garrido, whenever there was like a down moment or something like that, Yanguas, even though he sometimes can be like quite, I guess, annoying on the bench and stuff, but Yanguas is the kind of player where it's like, if you're having a down moment yourself, you kind of look at him and you say like, I'm happy that I've got Yanguas besides me, and I know that he can carry me whilst maybe I'm not feeling like great in this match. Now, I don't think you can do that with Alex Ruiz, and I don't think Alex Ruiz is going to bring sort of him any confidence. So I can just very easily see moments where Garrido maybe isn't playing his best, and Alex Ruiz is basically not going to be able to give him the energy that I think he kind of needs. So I don't know, just they don't give me a lot of confidence, to be honest. And it just kind of seems like, I don't know, the whole thing you just mentioned, I don't know if they've really been like announced. I haven't seen anything as well together. I don't know. They haven't really been training together. I mean, Garrido played the FIP Platinum with Bella. I mean, probably would have been the perfect chance to start playing with your partner. So yeah, I mean, doesn't look great to me, this partnership.
Yeah, I mean, shock once again. I mean, we did mention this previously when the rumors were circling and Garrido and Ruiz were basically confirmed as a pair, even though they're not officially confirmed. They are really, because they are one of the seeds in the Finland P2. And yeah, I just don't think their game styles match at all. I don't think their personalities match at all. I mean, Alex Ruiz is not in his best moment in terms of his paddle level. I think it's the lowest that it's been for a number of years. And I think that Garrido right now, given that his the mental side of the game is probably his biggest but, he needs a partner that's not just super positive, because I do think that Alex Ruiz is going to be super positive, but just a partner that's more in form, I'd say. So someone that's playing well, because I think if Garrido gets put with someone who's not performing, or not performing to his or her, his standard, that can potentially affect him mentally, and he can kind of get back into his shell, because I think he's almost, I feel like Garrido's a bit of a shy player. I don't know whether you agree. I think he's just quite in his own world, and he needs a player that's just talking to him a lot, very positive, etc. And I do think that Alex Ruiz is a great guy, and he is probably a very positive player. So maybe my kind of the way I'm explaining myself doesn't make as much sense when you look at it from that perspective. But I just think their personalities don't really match, at least in my eyes. And most importantly, is the game styles. They're both very good in attack, but not that good in defense. And I think their strengths are each other's strengths, and their weaknesses are each other's weaknesses. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
And then maybe just like a final point, which I was actually just checking out, because I kind of was like thinking about it. And actually, Alex Ruiz was playing at the Euro Champs this week, and Garrido wasn't. So they've had no training time, or at least maybe they would have had very limited training time, because the prior week, that was the break, Garrido was playing the flip Platinum with Bella, and now this week Alex Ruiz has been playing the Euro Champs, and Garrido wasn't. So I mean, it just seems like probably they haven't had a lot of training time. So we'll see. I mean, maybe for future tournaments, they can, once they start playing together, it gets a bit better. But I think for this one, they'd probably be my bet for major disappointment.
It just feels like they've teamed up based on the rankings.
Yeah.
I mean, and based on the seedings, because we know how important that is, and you can't blame them for doing that. But Garrido's obviously looked at the forehand potential players list, and who's highest up? Alex Ruiz. Yep, that's what I'm going to go for. We know how important seedings are. They really affect how deep pairs can go in tournaments, unless they massively overperform, which doesn't usually happen. So that's what I think the rationale has been behind that partnership. And I really don't agree with that way of thinking, at least looking at these two players individually and how they may work as a pair. But yeah, just maybe one final point on, give me your two picks for the winners, because you mentioned a few names, but you haven't stuck to two, and I think that'd only be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted to. I was just continuing talking, so maybe I could. I didn't have to face this question. Basically, that was me trying to get away from it. Okay, so I'm definitely gonna go with Yanguas and Stupa.
Yeah.
But for my second pair, I mean, this is tough. I'm not gonna lie.
You can't just go the same as I've gone.
No, you know what? I mean, the thing is, I'm just gonna seem like an absolute idiot for saying the Nenno and Lebrón when I've been like when I've been basically doubting them so much. But for this tournament, I do think that Yeah, I'd say Yanguas and Stupa and Dinen and Lebron. And then close third, as you mentioned as well, Koki and John would be my picks. But
I
yeah,
mean, it's only fair enough.
I'll stick with those two.
Yeah, nice. I mean, it's only fair enough. I mean, when you ask someone from the outside who doesn't, so say you ask someone random, who are your picks for the tournament? You mean you picked the number one and number two seeds. So
Yeah.
absolutely fair enough. I think they are individually the best players playing in that tournament alongside Paquito. It's just whether those partnerships are going to work straight from the off. But we've seen how many times partnerships do work straight from the off because players are just so good. When players are that good, they can just adapt instantly to playing with each other. And actually, we've seen Stupa and Yanguas have been training for quite a long time now. I mean, I know that they announced their partnership quite early on. It was one of the first ones to be announced, and I've seen a lot of stuff on social media regarding them training, etc. And the Nenno and Lebrón took a little bit longer, I think. At least their announcement did. But again, they've been training. So yeah, very, very excited for the tournament. Can't wait.
Me too. I mean, I have a lot of faith in Dinen, I'm not gonna lie. I think that he's gonna kind of get back to the level we've been like, accustomed to seeing of him. So yeah, I guess that's kind of like my big bet. And I think that he's going to be able to support Lebron a lot better than Paquito did. But let's see. I mean, as you said, very excited because I think it's going to be quite a fun watch. And we'll see as well how like conditions are in Finland and stuff. I don't know, like indoor, outdoor. I mean, Finland is probably at the moment with a good temperature and not very hot. But you never know these days because sometimes, tournaments can be indoor and they put the heating like blasted up and then the ball goes flying high, even though outside is like quite a mild temperature. So we'll see when we actually see the play how the conditions are. But yeah, I mean, everyone please do tune in because it's going to be a very exciting one and obviously the last one before the big summer break. So make sure that you do get to watch some paddle. And yeah, I mean, I think this brings us to the end of the episode. On my side, I hope everyone really enjoyed it. Been loving sort of the comments and interaction as of late. So please do keep it coming. Let us know your thoughts ahead of the Finland P2 and who you think is going to win or who do you think is going to make the final. Maybe biggest disappointments as well as Hugo and I did. But yeah, that's it from me, and we'll catch you next time.
I just want to drop a very quick bomb regarding what you just mentioned about the Nenno and how much faith you have in him. I have a feeling that one of the reasons why he's teamed up with Lebron and one of the reasons why he's taken that step is because he wants to show Galan that he's open to teaming up in the future. Because obviously Galan called him not that long ago and Lebron called Stupa and that didn't happen. And now everything's changed. And Galan's doing really well with Chingoto. I mean, they're literally challenging for the number one spot. But say they suddenly drop a little bit off the race, or Galan feels that he needs an extra punch to really challenge. I think Nenno would be just the perfect partner for Galan. And being totally honest, I feel like Nenno and Chingoto at their peak are incredibly similar players. But I put Nenno a level above in the big majority of kind of areas of the game. I'm talking about the peak of their game. So yeah, very, very, very much looking forward to the tournament. And yeah, I'll say goodbye because you're probably bored of hearing from me. Have a great week, guys, and keep interacting because we're loving it.